I love Vikings. The show, that is. Not the real thing, because they don't exist anymore. I love Vikings so much. Look, here's me at a Viking festival dressed up like a Viking. I guess everyone says I'm Floki. I don't know, I was just going for generic Viking. But you know what I love more than the TV show Vikings? Not dying from a preventable illness. Now look, not everyone can know everything about everything. I get that, right? We don't all have access to the well of Erd. We can't all poke out one eye and gain infinite knowledge or whatever the fuck it said that Odin did. But that being said, it still blows my mind how many people don't understand how vaccines work. Now, you can still be against vaccines. I think that's wrong. I think you're dumb if you are. All the information is available. Yet, I still see comment after comment on Facebook and all kinds of shit of just people not understanding how it is a vaccine actually works. And I don't understand the anti-vaxxer movement. I mean, it would be weird if these so-called anti-vaxxers didn't have one or all of, say, the following. Diphtheria, tetanus, poliomyelitis, measles, mumps, rubella, hepatitis B, influenza, plague, rabies, beta, yellow fever, zolster. Whatever the fuck that is. Oh, that's chickenpox, right. You probably had a vaccine, you get the idea, right? But all of a sudden, people are freaking out because the government's mandated it. And I honestly think it's because people got too comfortable. They just got too comfortable living in their beautiful little white Western world. Now all of a sudden they're freaking out. I know it's not just white people, but it is fun to poke fun of them. Only because it's one of the only socially acceptable groups you can make fun of. And because I'm white, I can get away with it. Although I'm sure I'm going to get some nasty comments on this video. Anyway, the point is, when I go on Facebook, I see a bunch of comments that look like this. Do you have any figures on the number of people being infected even though they are fully vaccinated? If it's high, why are we bothering to being done? Have you been living under a rock? All whom died are vaccinated, except one. If the vaccine protects the life of COVID death, then why they died? Why they died? The more vaxxed, the more cases. Yeah, that's just basic maths, dude. I mean, and then you've got people who are just downright skeptics, like, so at what point do we admit the vaccine doesn't work? And then there's a whole bunch of comments. So you got people who are like, they just completely don't understand how vaccines work. Now, I don't like to get too political, so I'm going to stay out of politics here, even though it's pretty obvious how I feel about the whole vaccine thing. But I grew up around medical professionals, so maybe I took it for granted how vaccines work, but I'm pretty sure we got taught this shit in high school. I mean, it's not fucking rocket science, is it? Even me, I get it. So, using the coolest show ever, Vikings, I'm going to describe how vaccines work using a bunch of terrible metaphors and analogies. Spoilers potentially for the show Vikings, by the way. So, you are the king of Northumbria. Let's call you King McCurls, because I forget his name. Alar, I think it is. Whatever. So you're going about your day praying to non-existent deities, eating boar, and forcing your daughters to marry against their will. So it's just a real good time all around, except for the daughters, obviously. Next minute, a bunch of Northmen, Vikings, come down from the north, a group of savage marauders from a country and culture you've never even heard of. They arrive at your shore and start pillaging the land, raiding your villages, murdering and raping as they go, invading temples, and slaughtering a bunch of kiddie fiddlers, stealing your gold and burninating the countryside. Before you recognize the threat, before you can summon your army, which are probably scattered to the south, protecting your landlocked borders as opposed to this giant ocean to the north. It wouldn't make sense. So all your armies down south, they're carrying on fighting their own people or whatever, just fighting southern invaders. Next minute, north comes down. Your kingdom has been sacked and your land's devastated. So two things can happen from here. One, if you're lucky enough, you can overcome the odds. Let's say you fight off the enemy but with great loss, as you are unprepared to defend against such a foreign and formidable foe of which you haven't seen before. So you're not even prepared for that kind of assault, right? Ultimately, you do manage to send the Vikings away on their longboats, but the loss, both economically and militarily, is great, leaving you vulnerable to, say, like harsh winter, plague, other diseases and things, other invading armies. That's why it was supposed to be an analogy. So forget the plague, let's say other armies, because your army's been slaughtered. They've been bashed and bruised. You've run out of energy and supplies, leaving you vulnerable to other forms of attack and ultimately defeat. Or perhaps even vulnerable to attacks from different but similar Viking strains. Or number two, it's completely too late. Your forces are scattered, your defenses are low, your garrisons are weak. Ultimately, you don't prevail and you end up strung up in a tree with your lungs ripped out. These are your two options pretty much. Both have devastating effects in the short and long term. You might come out alive at the end of it, you'll live, but you won't live well. Now let's look at somewhere like Wessex, or in this example I'll use Francia. They had previously heard of the Great Heathen Army and thus had time to defend against a possible attack. They fortified their kingdom, recruited more soldiers, felled enough trees to create awesome weapons and ramparts, stocked up on essentials such as food and hot babes. Francia prepared itself for the attack and thus had a heads up, a head start even. So by the time the Vikings got there, they were more or less able to fight them off with relative ease. Did the Vikings still end up on Frankish lands? Did they suffer some casualties? Absolutely. But because they were able to prepare their army, they suffered less casualties, less devastation, and ultimately defeated the Vikings in a much quicker amount of time. Were they as savagely ransacked as Northumbria? Fuck no. And why? Because simply, they built up their defenses in preparation. Maybe the Vikings would never come. So all of that preparation may have been a waste of time, but it was around. They knew the Vikings were there. They knew they'd already gone to other countries and ransacked it. So it made sense for them to prepare their defenses just in case. Maybe they even had their own Viking, like a double agent, in the form of Rollo. Is Rollo the vaccine? I don't know if that's a very good analogy, but let's just say he is. Rollo went to Francia and he told them what to expect. He told them the Vikings a bit how they attack, about the boats, their strategies, their tactics, etc., etc. So Francia not only had a huge heads up on building random defenses, they also knew exactly, or more or less, what was coming, and were able to build their defenses to stop the Vikings thanks to the Rollo vaccine. Huzzah! Of course, in the show, Vikings come and go and get ransacked and ultimately defeated. It's not a great analogy, but that's what history has taught us. Those who prepare in advance of an attack are more likely to survive the attack with the least amount of damage done to them. Those who sit around and do fuck all, like the Northumbrians or like those priests, they're going to have their guts pulled out through their anus. Not a pleasant thought. You see, all the vaccine does is tell your body what to expect. It's not some miracle fucking force field thing. You can still get the illness, but your body's had a chance to build up its defenses. Its own natural defenses. This is why I don't get a lot of comments, people saying, oh, I'll rely on my natural defenses, thank you. That's what a vaccine does. The vaccine itself isn't the one stopping the virus. It's more or less tricking your body into preparing antibodies so that it has a chance to defeat the virus if you get it. Meaning you're going to carry the virus for a shorter amount of time, you're going to have less severe symptoms, and you're not going to be spreading it as much because, simply put, you won't have it for as long. Could you still get horrible side effects? Can you still die? Absolutely, but you're less likely to if you've had a chance to prepare your own natural defenses, and that's what a vaccine does. It tells your body, hey, there's some enemies across the river, they're probably going to come over here soon, here's how they operate, build up your fucking defenses. Again, you might not be okay, but more often than not, you'll end up with less severe long-term effects. If you don't have the vaccine, you're likely to have more severe effects, which is just a shitty time. You might be fine, you might not. But why take that risk? If you know the Vikings are coming, build some fucking ramparts. If you know the world is suffering from a giant pandemic, build up your own natural defenses. That's what a vaccine does. It tells the soldiers what the enemy looks like. These are all created naturally by your own body. Your body creates its own soldiers. The vaccine is not the soldiers. The vaccine is a scout telling you what's to come. Then your body prepares its own natural defenses. It builds up its army. Thus, you're less likely to get sick, clog up the hospitals, okay? You're going to have the virus for a shorter amount of time, or you might not, but you probably will. You're going to be healthier and stronger with less long-term effects because you have built your fucking army up in preparation for the heathen army that's on its way. Might not ever reach your shores, but it's already at our fucking shores, isn't it? It's everywhere these days. Build up your own defenses. Get vaccinated. A vaccine is Rollo. Super hot and awesome. That's a fucking terrible analogy. He didn't come with a huge army though, did he? He joined the Franks and told them what to expect. This is what a vaccine does. Rollo is the blueprint for the coronavirus. He is a Viking who has been weakened in such a way that he doesn't hurt. He's not a big enough threat to hurt the Franks, but he can tell them what to expect. So in this terrible, terrible analogy, the Vikings are the virus, even though we kind of want them to win, but they're bastards. You love to hate them. You hate to love them. It's one of those. The Vikings are the virus, Rollo is the vaccine, and you can choose to be fucking King Ayla of Northumbria, or you can be Francia, who prospered and defeated the fucking virus. Personally, I would rather have my army prepped and ready to go, all my supplies stocked up, and all the hot babes there, probably. I would rather do that than sit by and pray to false deities who aren't going to help you. So, fucking get vaccinated and or watch Vikings, because it's a fucking fantastic show. I mean, you know where I stand on this. I'm triple vaccinated, and I feel absolutely fucking... My fucking favorite shirt too. God damn it.